when we talk about non-attachment, people normally associate it with not loving, staying away from, not being there. But non-attachment is so great. Non-attachment is so full of love. It is so full of joy, because you know why? There is no possessiveness in it. Where you have possessiveness in relationships, to your belongings, to material things, to whatever it is, this belongs to me. Wherever there is possessiveness, there is pain. I'm so sorry to tell you that. That's why pain is so unavoidable in this world. You fall in love with someone, you expect them to be a certain way. They're not. You're disappointed. That is attachment. In relationships, we want everything to be the way we want it to be. Not possible. That is attachment. But how? How do we do this living in this world? It almost seems just too impossible for a human being to do. So the only way I know how is, like we spoke about last week, is seeing the divine in every single person that you're with, in every situation, and seeing that everything happens for the best. Maybe you don't know why, but you just know it's for the best. And that's the non-attachment. There is a bigger plan. You know, we say God's plan is perfect, but where is God? Where is God? God is within you. God is within me. God is everywhere. God is not out there and we're in here. God is everywhere. You read the Upanishads and it says God is up, down, side, left, right, in the person you hate and the person you love. It is everywhere. But of course, we get so involved with our human personality of desiring. I want this to go well. This has to go my way. This person has to love me like that. And this is where the relationship goes wrong. Let me give you an example. Parents and children, for example. Every parent wants their children to be happy, don't you? So you tell your children, as I told mine, I really want your goal in life is to find happiness. But not every parent does that, which I have learned. They tell the children, we want you to be happy, but we will only be happy if you become a doctor or a lawyer or a dentist, or if you make X amount of money. And then we will like you. Then you will be successful. So what are you telling that person? I will only be happy if you do things my way. What will happen to these parents? They'll be gently shocked. And then many of them come to me, tell me, I didn't expect my child to turn out this way. I gave them everything. It was your expectation that brought them to your family so that you learn not to expect anything. It's not in your hands. What is in your hands is to give love, to share what you know, your knowledge. If they do something wrong, you can tell them this is wrong, but what is wrong to you may not be wrong to them. For example, in the 70s when I was a teenager, especially the 80s, there was a lot of AIDS going around. I think you all know. This was my era. And there was a lot of talk about gays. And a lot of people were against them. And you know, I heard many people say, oh, I would accept it if my child isn't gay. And I used to turn to them and say, what is wrong with you? This is normal, you know? So we are heterosexuals, but they're gays as well. What do you see wrong in them? The people that resisted the most had children that were gay. You know why? To teach them to love unconditionally. To teach them not to judge by these small-minded thoughts, to put people in boxes because they're a certain way they're bad. We needed to break those cycles, and that's when the 90s came and people started to break this. People started to fight for who they were. It doesn't matter who you are. It's your soul that matters. It's love. It's finding yourself. Nowadays, people are very confused as well. We have the other extreme. They don't know what they are because they're confused by the internet. So that's the other extreme. So I tell a lot of young people, oh, I don't know my sexual preferences. So I said, sit down with yourself. What do you feel? What do you feel? Oh, because I read this on the internet, that if you have a dream about the same kind of sex, making love with same sex, it means that you're gay. I said, no. Everybody has these kind of dreams from different lifetimes. Really, that's the truth, to be quite honest with everyone. Everybody has these dreams. It's just dreams. It doesn't mean who you are. You need to sit with yourself and know, what are you attracted to? And know yourself. Know yourself. Don't be influenced. And some will know, oh, I really am gay, Nalanie. I've resisted it for so many years. And that's why I've been so unhappy. And they find themselves. Others, I'm not. I've resisted being myself for so many years, and that's why I'm unhappy. Do you see? Yoga is about finding your spirit, your higher self. You can only truly be happy if you're honest to yourself. Who am I? I'm just giving this as an example because I saw so many gays struggle in the 80s and I had to hold them tight. They were my friends. I was a dance teacher, so you can imagine I was surrounded by them. And in relationships, we seem to attach so much to our ideas. But sometimes our ideas are small and it's just our idea. And sometimes those ideas can never come to be. And the acceptance of, it is not about what I want or what I don't want. It is the acceptance of what is. What is there. It has nothing to do with me. It is what is there. And this is why they say the highest form of yoga, the highest form, is accepting everything. It doesn't mean you don't do something about it. And this is again where the prayer comes in. Lord, grant me the serenity. You know it. Say it with me. Lord, grant me the serenity
to accept things I cannot change. I try to change the things I can, and with wisdom to know difference.
For years I said this prayer. And what I learned was acceptance was magical. When you accept initially something that you don't want to accept, maybe you wanted to be so successful in a career and you're not. Or maybe you wanted to be famous and you haven't achieved it. When you accept it, it is very painful in the beginning. This is why Sri Patanjali tells us in Book 2, Sutra 1, accepting this pain for purification. It has taught you to let go. And how do you do the acceptance? Like I said, it is hard. We're humans. And he gives us the Kriya Yoga, the practice. And the practice is study of spiritual books. Start to read things that elevate your mind. Start to read about non-attachment. Start to understand where your pain comes from. Start to let it go. This takes time. Accept that. Mostly, most people, I think everybody's wonderful, but they don't believe that of themselves. And they come to me and they say, I can't accept it. Why does it take me so long? I do so much yoga practices, but I can't accept it. I said, because it takes a long time to work on yourself. And really, when you reach the threshold of pain where you can't do it anymore, you automatically let go. You just do. Life will teach you. If you don't learn, it will knock at your door. I always say, God knocks at your door and tells you, no, time to go or time to let it go. You don't listen. Then he bangs at your door. You don't listen. And finally the door breaks down and you listen. And this is what happens to most people. They get many signs along the way. People tell them again and again and again, but they don't listen. And this is what I learned about myself, and this is how I learned about non-attachment, because I thought, how could I be married with a man or live with a man and be non-attached? So that's when I realized, when I first started yoga, and I got all these concepts in my head. You have to be vegetarian, you can't do this, you can't have fun, you got all these crazy concepts in my head. And I started applying it to my husband, who I was madly in love with. And then I started to be not a very nice person, okay, because of my attachment to my spiritual studies. You see, you always have to watch at each step that you don't fall into the same trap. So I started to think I was better than him. Until one day, a yogi came in and stayed with me, and she opened my fridge, and there was a can of Coke. And she freaked out in my kitchen and said, "What are you doing with a can of Coke in your kitchen? How could you drink Coke? This is poison." And my husband was sitting there, and he looked at her and he goes, "Nell doesn't drink Coke. I do. So what's your problem, girl?" He told her straight, "What's your problem?" And she just went out in half. At that moment, she taught me a great lesson. How cruel it is to judge somebody else. So my husband was a meat eater. And so I thought, well, how do I deal with this? And this is how you learn attachment. Why was he sent to me? Why, if I so love being a vegetarian and he's a meat eater, why is this in my path? Obviously, there's something I have to learn. And that learning was non-attachment. So I started to make his food with great love, as I see many yogis here do for their partners who are meat eaters, and maybe they're not. And one time, another yogi came to my house. "Oh, Nalanie, how do you cook this meat for your husband?" I said, the meat is already dead. It's in the supermarket. I buy it. At least I know this meat is not gone to waste. I pray before I cook it. I offer it to my husband in love. I think that animal will feel in this house that it didn't lose its life for nothing. At least it served a purpose. It went to somebody who loved it. And after she heard that, she just was in shock. And she said to me, "I never thought of it that way." I said, "Why else would God send me a husband who loves to eat meat, to teach me about non-attachment and acceptance? It doesn't make us bad or good. It just may hurt his body a little bit more. If he eats too much meat." So I used to try and cut down the meat by putting lots of salad on his plate. What could I do? He'd only eat salad, green peas, and mash. He was brought up in England, no other vegetables. So that's what I had to do. So, but in the end, it just didn't bother me. And one day, I remember one Christmas, there was this turkey that I made for the family. And I was literally feeling a little sick, but I was doing it. He walked into the kitchen and he saw my face. I didn't say a word. And he goes, "You're never going to do that again." He said, "I won't make turkey, but I'll make roast lamb. Deal, that's your job." So you see, when you accept and you stop getting attached to your ideas of what is right or what is wrong, a lot of people will think I'm mad, and that's okay. A lot of people screamed at me, "Oh, you're too open with your views." But you know what? Letting my views go and what I thought gave me peace. It stopped me judging anybody else. It made me happy. So how can that be selfish? I was living the best life I could. I don't want to be arguing with my husband on a daily basis because somebody told me he had to be a certain way. And I realized at that point, whenever I felt a resentment towards something that we felt differently about, that it was my attachment to ideas. If I didn't agree, that was fine. I stuck to what I believed in. I never sacrificed what I believed in for me. Are you understanding this? It may not be what he believed in, but it was what I believed in. And that I stood by for me, not for anybody else. Because we don't know. You know, we read the literature and it says God is everywhere. And there we are judging everyone, judging everything, wanting everything the way we want it to be. So how does that equate to what we're saying? That means we're actually being hypocrites and liars to ourselves. So the work is really understanding this. And if you can't, if you really get to a point where you can't accept it, also accept who you are and walk away. There's two things you can do. You don't have to stay. I stayed because I understood my lesson. But maybe somebody's lesson is different. Are you understanding this? We are all so different. And this is also the attachment. My way is only right for me. You have to find what gives you balance. Balance, peace. Because ultimately that is the highest goal. Make God your peace. Do not even allow God to disturb your peace. Because peace is God. How do you know God? But with the peace in your heart. Be still and know that I am God, says the Psalms. Be still. There's your secret. But if you're constantly attached to things and desiring this, I want this, I want this. Oh, I won't be happy till I get 5 million in my bank account. You will never be happy. You may never get 5 million in your bank account. And you'll make everybody around you miserable. Your whole life will be gone. And when you reach 70 or 80, you say, I never experienced joy. It's too late, baby. It's too late. I met many people like that. Actually, I tell them it's not too late. You can enjoy the last few years. Change your thinking. Change your thinking. Don't be afraid to be who you are. Don't be afraid to be the divine you, the kind person you are. Sometimes being in toxic relationships takes your kindness and goodness away. I've seen that too. It takes people's goodness away. In my case, it made me bigger. In somebody else's case, it makes them smaller. You have to know yourself. If something is making you smaller, you are attached to the fear of being yourself. Nobody deserves to be made smaller. Love is about raising you up. You know, like that song you sang, you raise me up. You know, we're here to raise each other up, not pull each other down. Of course, there comes a time in our life when we need to correct things that are not correct. I've had to do it many times. And then when I tell the person this action that you're doing is really done to cause pain to somebody else, they may get really upset with me. And I have to lose the attachment that they do. Because I'm saying it in love. They're receiving it in anger. And this is what happens. So you really have to be responsible about the words you bring out to this world, because they affect people for a long, long time. But when you say these words that can be harsh sometimes, if it is said in love, that person will eventually get the message. I promise you, it does. It may take 10 years. I've had many patients or students I've seen, and when they did something purposely, I'm talking about intentionally, to hurt somebody else because they have a big ego or because they're jealous, and I've told them, this is not the right action because you're doing it wrong reason. You're jealous, and that's nasty. So your reaction is nasty. This is not acceptable. If you do it in love, it's very different. So they get very angry because, of course, they don't want to hear this. So they go away. And 10 years later, many times they've come back and said, I went through a whirlpool of pain. Cause and effect, right? Whatever you put out there, it comes back to you. So that's why I say just try to make your intentions full of love. Sometimes we get it wrong, and it's okay to get it wrong. We are human. And that's what you have to understand. The attachment to your guilt of getting something wrong is also horrible. And every time in my life when I got something wrong, and I knew it, I would hear Lord Jesus' voice to Saint Peter. When Peter asked Jesus, how many times should we forgive? And he answered, 70 by 7. And so when I do something wrong, I say sorry right away. Or when I have the realization that I've done it in the wrong way. And this is what we need to do. The attachment of ego, I have to be right, is man's downfall. It's our downfall. And the more you think you have to be right, and it is your way of doing things that is right, and everybody else is wrong, you will keep suffering. You'll keep suffering. But if you accept and know who you are and do what you believe in, and whether they believe it or not, that's their problem. Andrew sent us a lovely clip the other day to our WhatsApp group. And it was about a man. He says, what happens when somebody dies?
Do you know what happens after your funeral? In a few short hours, the crying will die down, and your family will be busy making arrangements for food or drink for your friends and relatives. Some of your relatives will start discussing current events over coffee, and some people will call your family to tell them that they can't make it in person because of an emergency. Some people will secretly start making travel arrangements because life is just too short. And someone in your family will start arguing that they contributed more financially to the funeral than others did. Eventually, the crowd is going to go their separate ways. And in the coming days and weeks, your cell phone might ring on occasion from people who didn't realize that you've died. Your employer will begin to search for your replacement. In a few days, your children will go back to work because their bereavement leave has run out. In a month, your spouse will be watching a comedy on TV and start to laugh. You'll be forgotten at an astonishing pace. Everyone's life will go back to normal. There'll be new elections, new scandals, and the traffic on the daily commute will be the same. And the Super Bowl will go on just as planned. Meanwhile, the first anniversary of your passing will be celebrated in a grand manner. But in the blink of an eye, years are going to have gone by, and there'll be very few people left to remember you. One day, looking at old photos, a friend might remember you. In your community, of the hundreds of people you became acquainted with, only one person may remember you and think about you sometime. Now tell me, if people will forget you so easily, then who are you living your life for? Who are you worried about? You spent your whole life worrying about what people will think about you. They don't, and they won't. So live your life for you.
And most of us spend our entire life attached to what people think about us, whether we're failures, whether we're successful, what others think we should be. At the end, it's really your family that's by your side, a few people. And some people who have treated their family so bad because of what people think don't even have that. And I've seen those too. Because they've been so selfish in their lives. The family, when they die, will give them a bit of respect the first month or two, but freedom, that's what they think. Now, how sad is that, right? And the yoga, all the yoga is that we are connected to the highest. So spend our time. How to spend your time? Now that you know the way of the world, spend your time in developing your spirit. your mind, your thought patterns. Remember, when you do this, you're not thinking that somebody else has to change. No, you have to stop that attachment that somebody is making you miserable. That is selling your power away. You are giving your power to somebody else. And we weren't born to do that. So you need to say, I'm not giving my power away. And then you need to sit with yourself and understand who you are and why certain people come to your life. Les often says people come to your life sometimes for a reason, a season, or a lifetime. Sometimes people come for a little reason or a season and we want to hold on to them forever. We can't. The more you hold on, the more they run away. And you have to know the difference. When is it a season? When is it a reason? And when is it a lifetime? Your heart will tell you. But you need to sit quiet. If you don't spend time with who you are, you will never get the answers. If you ask 1,000 people for opinion, each one will have a different opinion. So you need to go to your higher self, the God within, the Guru within, the Jesus, the Shiva, whatever you want to call it, within. And how do you go there? In those moments of silence. And that is Kriya Yoga. This is why we say Kriya Yoga is study of spiritual books to elevate your mind. And Kriya Yoga is surrender to Ishvara Pranidhanam. What does that mean? To the highest will. We think we have control. I'm so sorry. We have very little. We can only control this moment and decide we're going to love it or not. We have very little control. But the greatest control we have is this moment. And this moment can make all the moments that are to come magical. And that's what yoga is all about. Don't waste time on spending your thoughts on so much garbage, on so much fear. This is our attachment. Fear of not being liked, like I said, fear of not being famous, fear of being a failure, fear of fear of death. Fear. What is there to fear? You know you're going to die in the end anyway. Fear that you don't live. That is the message in yoga continuously. Fear that you are not living fully as you want to live. And then when you listen to yourself, you will hear the decision. It will come to you. It may not come immediately. And this is why Sri Patanjali tells us, for a long time you have to practice, but you really do, without a break and with all your heart. You can only do it with all your heart if you know what you really want. You know that song? Tell me what you want, what you really, really want. Yeah. Ask yourself again and again and again. And if, for example, you can't help yourself, and some people can't because they're at that stage of learning. I see, but Nalanie, I really have a desire for this. And then I say, what can you do? You really have this desire. You can't just cut it. You pray. You pray hard. You ask yourself, give me the strength to let this desire go, because this desire is causing you pain. If it wasn't causing you pain, no problem. But be assured of a good result in the end. They go, what do you mean? If I let this desire go, I will be miserable. I said, we have a mantra. Om Karam Bindu Samyuktam Nityam Dayanti Yoginaha Kammadam Moksharam Shaiva Om Karaya Namo Namaha. What does that mean? Om, united with the source, on which the yogis ever dwell, grants desires and liberation. Salutation. to the Omkaram. In other words, when you are focused on the highest, and your intention is not to hurt or cause harm, but to have peace and joy, then whatever desire you have will be granted to you. But also, that desire will liberate you. How does that work? Because you think you can't do without that desire. Once you get what you want, after a few months, maybe a year, 2 years, you realize that that desire hasn't brought you happiness or joy. And so after a while you go, did I really want this so badly? I must have been mad. And then you become liberated from it forever. Forever. And this is, and it is a funny thing, because we are given these desires so that we can learn to detach from them. Isn't it a funny game? I think whoever designed our program made it pretty hard for us. Because it wanted us to feel the challenge, to know the joy of going through the challenge and getting to that end and succeeding, because you will always succeed. Grants desires and you'll be liberated. When you're liberated, you realize, you know what? I may desire this and that. If it comes, great. If it doesn't come, great. It's really quite great, because you know that no matter what, if you keep at it, it gives other people hope. You don't give up on yourself. Do you understand this? This feeling of guilt, this feeling of I'm not good enough, the feeling is I can't do it. No, don't give up on you. The desire, if you really have to have it, will be granted, and don't judge yourself. And right after it's granted, if it's not meant for you, you'll be liberated. You don't have to worry about any of it. The gods will look after it. It's not in your hands. Life, it teaches you. Whatever you find difficult, life will bring to you. That is the challenge of non-attachment, all right? So you're very attached to your children. Your children will give you a lot of problems. I'm sorry, they will. Because you'll have to let them go and let them live and let them learn. But still always giving love and guidance. Always guidance. And if you're not happy with what they're doing, you also need to advise them. I am not happy. I used to tell my children that. I'm not happy with your choice. But if you feel it's going to make you happy, go ahead. You'll soon learn. You'll soon learn. Do you know what I'm saying? Are you hearing attachment in your own life? It's very easy to write in books and read in books. It is the practice in your own life. And when it comes with love, when it comes with kindness, when it comes with compassion, when it comes with understanding, and sometimes even with anger. Sometimes you have to apply something with anger, because sometimes that's the only way people will change. Not because you want to be angry, but because your anger will make them move to do something positive. And you have to do that. I've seen that in so many relationships. Not working. They break up with the person. The pain is so bad that the person finally learns to do something else. But they needed that breakup to grow. And sometimes they don't grow. Sometimes they don't. But the other person is happy, because they're not trying to manipulate the relationship anymore. So non-attachment relationship is a very, very, very difficult thing to understand. So by trying to understand it too much, or overthinking or overanalyzing, you drive yourself a little crazy. Sit with yourself. Do some pranayama. This is also Kriya Yoga. Maybe next week we can do more Kriya Yoga, more pranayama, because it takes you to another dimension in your mind. And with the breathing, after you do it for like 15-20 minutes, it takes you to another dimension. While you're in that dimension, you can experience a little bit of that peace that is not attached to anything else. And once you taste that, you want it all the time. And then you work towards that. And that is your inspiration to keep practicing. Because there is a peace beyond all other pieces. There is a desire so high that is beyond all our earthly desires. Because the earthly desires are earthly desires, but we're only on earth for a little while, but we don't really die, we just continue. So if you want a good continue into the next life or next dimension or the next planet, you have to prepare yourself. And I just like to read to you some of the quotes I wrote. I was looking for non-attachment quotes today, and to be quite honest, I found that I had most of them. Just to be quite truthful. And I go, oh my God, I have so many of these myself. So I'll read some. It came to the relationship, right? Every relationship has its ups and downs. We are happy when all goes well. We should learn to accept when things don't. The secret of a deep, loving relationship is to accept all. When ownership enters into another's life, then that relationship is destined to doom. When somebody feels they own you and they want you to put you down in order for them to feel up, that is doomed. Do not accept that. None of us deserve to be put down so that somebody else feels better about themselves. This happens a lot today in relationships. They get unhappy when their partner is successful. Instead of saying, wow, I want you to be happy, I want you to be successful, I want you to shine. When their partner shines, they get jealous. I've seen it again and again and again. I said, but if you love your partner, you want them to shine, you want to be proud of them, not put them down. Now this kind of relation, destined to doom. It is, because it's manipulation. Keep you as their prisoner. So you have to be such a bad person. That's why I'm in love with you. Hello? Oh, this is just... Romance is necessary to keep a marriage alive. Be innovative or relationship alive these days. Find ways to be romantic constantly and keep the loving feeling alive. Look always for the best in the other person. Dwelling on the worst characteristics will create enmity and sorrow. And this is not only in marriage, it's with your children, it's in your business, it's in every aspect of your life. Not only in relationships, with everything you do in your life. This is why it's so important to love what you do. You must love what you do. But many people do what brings them so much money, and they spend their lives miserable. It is wisdom to look for something that maybe gives you less material things, but far more joy. Because life is about joy. And you want to say at the end of your days, I had joy. Now, obviously, money is a beautiful energy when you know how to use it. It's there for us to enjoy, to have all these things. Money gives it to us. But it's not the attachment to money that gives it to you. It is the acceptance of it and understanding there are times when it will flow, times they won't flow, but always to feel abundant. And when you have peace and joy, you will always feel, I am so rich, won't you? But if you have no peace and no joy and only fear, you will always feel poor. You will always feel poor. So start to say all the time, this is really good, I am abundant. Say it, say it. Everybody, abundant. I am abundant in every way.
I am abundant in every way.
Remember, the mantra grants desires and
liberation.
So if you're abundant in every way, the universe will make you
Liberated.
So you will have the abundance without the attachment. Isn't that magical? You will have the abundance without the attachment. And then you're free. That's freedom. That's moksha. To have all this and know one day it can all go. That's freedom. That's moksha. The universe, because I know I'm abundant, it didn't bother me, it will give me anything I want. But I'm very careful about what I ask for. I'm very careful what I ask for. I only ask for joy and peace for everyone I know. Good health, whatever can be service to the world. And service to me too. May I be blessed to be a good person. May I be blessed to continue this practice. May I be blessed so I can live in connection with God every day, the God in my heart, the God in everyone. May I please have that gift because I'm so abundant, you'll give it to me. Can you say, I am so abundant, you give it to me.
I am so abundant, you give it to me.
I have so much love. I have so much love. And that's why I receive so much love. Say,
that's why I receive so much love.
and this is the energy of the divine. So this is what I'm talking about. This is what the scriptures are talking about. You don't need to worry about a thing. And if you just keep telling yourself that, even when you decide you want something and you don't really want it, you'll get it. You'll get it. You just get it. But if it's sensible and not harmful to you or harmful to anybody else, you have to remember that. That is the secret. That is the secret again and again and again. And sometimes you do cause harm to people, but you don't mean to. But it's better to love and lost than never to have loved at all. To live the life that the gods wanted us to live, without judgment, without fear, without anger, but just love, okay? And that is non-attachment.